Hi,
Hi,
I'm Chris. Nice to
I'm
meet you.
Neha. Nice to meet you.
Neha Aziz.
Yes.
Are you in Texas?
Yes, I'm in Texas. I'm in Austin.
I'm wearing a Texas shirt and I'm doing this.
Oh, amazing. Love it.
Although I have no affiliation with Texas.
Is that
at
from
all.
a boutique?
It is, but I didn't get it. My girlfriend was there for South by Southwest.
Oh,
and
okay.
brought it
I used
back.
to work there.
Oh,
At South by Southwest, not
oh,
at
it's
the
up,
boutique.
not at the boutique.
I did used to work at a boutique on South Congress, which I think that's where your shirt is from.
You recognize it?
Yeah. Well, because it said Stag, and that's like a men's boutique on South Congress. So I'm assuming it's the same, but I could be very wrong.
There's no way to know. There's no way to know.
There isn't. I don't really have any reason to go in there. So, I mean, like I went there like in February because I was with my friend, but like it's a pricey store, and I'm like, I don't have disposable income like that. So,
Oh, really?
I won't be going in there.
Well, she didn't tell me that, so I don't know.
No.
Now I feel bad. I need to get her something nice because I didn't realize. So I was looking up your looking at your LinkedIn, and it says many things, right?
Yes.
It says film curator, podcaster, clearly,
Yes,
writer, filmmaker, artistic director at Austin Asian American Film Festival.
Yes.
I'm sure there's other things in there because I was looking at your bio. You've done a lot of things.
Yes.
What if you're at a dinner party or you're at a cocktail party and you're chatting to someone and they say, "What do you do?" What's the answer?
I usually am just like, I kind of do a lot of things. Like I freelance and like I do this, like I made a film, blah blah blah. Basically. Yeah.
Like a lot of people in LA.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
And I was just there. Well, not just there. I was there in early May.
Doing what? What were you doing here?
I had a film play at a festival.
Which festival?
It's well, it was Los Angeles Asian Pacific Film Festival, but it is now VC Film Fest.
VC?
Yes.
Which means what? Which stands for what?
Visual Communications. It's like the organization that puts on like LA Asian Film Festival, but they like kind of like went through a rebrand, and they're trying to just go by that now.
Right. And what's the film?
It was a short film it was my first short film that I made last year called So That Happened.
Called So, That Happened.
Yes.
Is that how you're supposed to say it?
No, it's more so just like, oh yeah, so not quite that enthusiastically.
Gotcha.
No.
So That Happened. So that's been playing festivals. Been doing well.
It's played 4 so far, and I'm waiting to hear back from like 25. So
oh wow.
Yes,
you're doing the circuit.
From a bunch. Yep.
So I was so curious about that because you are also a film curator, right, for a festival.
Yes,
and you've worked in the film for a few. Oh, okay. So yeah, you've done that for many film festivals, and this is your first time being in the filmmaker role, right?
Yes.
There's a lot to unpack there because there's the identity part where you have to put it out to the world that you're doing this, right? Which can be scary when you are normally the judger, like looking at people's films saying that's not good enough for my festival.
Right.
And now you're stepping into it.
Yeah.
What was that like? What were some of your like hesitations and fears like first going into it?
I think it was like I kind of fell into programming. Like I was always interested in it. Like when I worked at South by, I mostly did communications. So I did like all the social media and blogs and announcements for the film festival and for parts of the film conference, and then South by as like a brand. And I would also like screen films because I just asked to if I could. And so I would watch films, and well, obviously I loved films, but then I kind of watched them and like, I put in my 2 cents. I obviously wasn't making the decisions. I wasn't like a programmer. I was just like, hey, like, let me watch them. And they're like, fine, whatever, like you can do it. Because my position at South by used to be within the film team, and then they had a big reorg like right before I got there, and then my position moved into communication. So I was like kind of like half and half in a way. And then I had a friend, all right, well, she's still my friend. Nothing happened. Her name She worked full-time at Alamo Drafthouse. She worked at Austin Asian American Film Festival. And I had met her at Fantastic Fest in Austin. I watched like the 5 non-scary films there, and they had a trade with South by. So that was the only reason I was there. Otherwise, I'm like a child and can't watch scary things. And we saw Burning from Lee Chang-dong, and we're actually going to play that in Austin next week. So that's pretty cool. And I met her. We had a mutual friend who I worked with. But then like I would randomly see her and like, follow each other on social media. And then like in maybe early 2020, I want to say, or maybe late 2019, she texted me and was like, hey, we're looking for programmers for Austin Asian. Like, I think you have good taste. Would you be interested? And I'm like, well, yes, but I can't because I work full time at South by, so I can't like work at another festival. And then I got laid off because of COVID-19, as in many other people all around the world. And then I reached back out and I was like, hey, like I'm free. And so that's kind of how I started programming. Like I would like screen things, but like that was my first time actually like being a part of like the decisions, and then kind of like worked my way up to now being the artistic director. And I program films for the Cleveland International Film Festival. And I also program films for a nonprofit called rePRO, which is all about like body autonomy and reproductive health. And we curate, it used to be once a month, but this year we kind of changed the format where we have one film every other month, and then we do all these other components to it, and it's featured in our newsletter, and they focus on like a lot of different subjects like body positivity, adoption, endometriosis, like a lot of different things.
It just sounds like a lot. Like I don't even know, like how do you manage your days and your weeks? And
I mean, they're all at different times, and like different time commitments, right? So like Cleveland, the film festival was in April, so I haven't done anything for them. I'm going to be meeting with the artistic director this week to kind of see like my role in coming back and stuff. So they all have like their busy moments and their chill moments, and and then I try to create stuff in between. And then I also I'm a communications manager for the Asian American Documentary Network as well. And then I started writing for a PBS digital series this year too.
what's that?
It's called Roots of Resistance. So the first 2 episodes have already come out. It was me and another writer, and they're adding a couple of more. The one that I wrote was about the longest student strike in history. It's when ethnic studies became like a part of the curriculum at San Francisco State University in the 1960s.
Okay. And you have a podcast?
I did. Yeah, it was a limited series, so it's done now. But I would like to do some more storytelling in that medium.
Right. Was it a scripted, like a narrative podcast?
No, well, it was scripted, but it was nonfiction. So it was about the partition of India and the formation of Pakistan. I was born in Pakistan in 1990, and then I moved to the US when I was little. And it's basically how like Pakistan came to be, because not many people really know about it. And it's kind of crazy to think that a country has only been around for 75 years. It'll be 77 actually in 1 month. And it's, it was kind of reminiscent to the Trail of Tears that we had in the United States, where it was like a forced migration. A lot of people, were forced to leave their homes, a lot of violence, a lot of genocide, a lot of really awful things, that are present in a lot of wars and things like that. So like 1 to 2 million people died, 14 to 15 million people were displaced. And, my grandparents are survivors, right? Like were born in India. It's only my parents, myself and my sister who were born in Pakistan, because it didn't exist, up until 1947. And so I did a podcast, and it was the iHeartRadio network. And like, I wrote out the scripts, like I interviewed people and I had conversations with them, but it wasn't kind of like the standard, like we're having a conversation. It was like my own narration and like my personal story, like as I discovered a lot of things, because I was in the research for 2 years, and it was, pretty draining to like read all of these horrible things that happened. And then like, I interviewed relatives. I interviewed two brothers who were reunited after 76 years. They were separated at partition, and the way they found each other is truly insane. It was through YouTube.
No
And
way.
yeah, it was really
Wow.
weird. Like they and just kind of like word of mouth kind of thing, where it was like someone saw it, hey, this story sounds familiar, could this be someone that you had lost? Because a lot of people were separated from their families, on the journey or what have you. And so like a lot of people are doing oral histories about partition, because like we don't really have museums or memorials. Like, they're not really anywhere. So a lot of these stories are like passed down from older generations, like through audio, through video, and so someone saw this and like they got connected, and one is in India and one is in Pakistan. And because of their tumultuous relationship, it's very difficult to get visas if you're from the other country to visit the other country. And they were able to meet only because of a visa-free crossing at a border, which you didn't need a visa for, because there was a Sikh temple there. And so that's where they met, because that was the only place they could like basically legally allowed to visit. They have since both visited each other, because this was like 2021, I think. But yeah, that, and like, you're subject to
Tell me again, they were separated for how long?
76 years.
That is wild.
Yes. Yeah, it is. They live very, very different lives. And like I said, they they met at this corridor where this like temple is, but like they could only visit each other as long as the visiting hours were open, right? And then they had to leave. So it was that I think was like I don't want to say my favorite. It's kind of weird to say you have like a favorite episode when like everything is like so insane that happens that we're talking about. But I think it's the one I'm
impactful.
I think the most impactful. And it just like a lot of work like had gone into it too. Like I had to because neither brother speaks English, and I can speak Urdu and Hindi, but they mostly speak Gujarati, which is, Asia has so many different languages. And so I was like WhatsApping with one of their grandchildren to set up one of the interviews. Right. And then the other one was like a family friend. So it was a task for sure. Yeah.
And brought together by YouTube. Finally, something good came out of YouTube.
Right. Yeah.
So what does that do? I mean, that sounds like it would be emotionally affecting, regardless of someone's, background, because it's just such a movement story. But for you personally, what did that do?
Like I said, like it's like this is like something my grandparents went through, and so like I talked to my grandfather about it, and and like in the kind of first episode, I kind of get into like, this is kind of how I found out about like the actual truth about partition, because relatives don't really speak about it, right? Like they don't want to talk about like emotional things. Sometimes they're just like, it happened, whatever, I don't want to talk about it, and like my grandparents on my dad's side lived with my family for years, and I didn't really know about partition at the time, because they moved back to Pakistan, I think, when I was in my early teenage years. But like I never once asked them about their life there, and like now it's kind of too late. Like my grandmother on my dad's side has passed away. My grandfather just turned 90. Like memories aren't what they used to be. So in a way, it's kind of like an atonement in a way, but then also like in covering like history. And it's also like, there's no, and I say this like I feel like a lot, like there's no like timeline on like learning something or educating yourself, right? And so I think with this podcast was a learning experience for me, because I knew like the basic facts in ish, right? I didn't know like a lot of like deeper things and like a lot of the history, because it's not taught in school usually. I grew up in Arlington, which, I mean, Texas public education system is a whole nother situation that we don't have time for to discuss here. But it, like we talked about, like, oh, like, like there was independence, like, like they were freed from the British, and like Gandhi was there and whatever. And I'm like, and that's it. And it's just like,
and Gandhi was there. Like,
right. Yeah. And it's kind of insane, because I'm like, a new country was formed. That changes things geographically, that changes things politically, that changes things historically, and we don't learn about it in like world history. Like, that's wild to me. And it's like, there's plenty of other cases where like that's also true. And that's like really like, and that was kind of it. And so then when I went back to Pakistan for the first time since being born in 2017, I saw an exhibit at a mall, because the mall is kind of like the nightlife there, like it's open super late. And it was made by a filmmaker named Sharmeen Obaid Chinoy, who I don't know if you're familiar with, but she's having an amazing career. Like, she has 2 Oscars for documentary shorts. She just directed a documentary that opened at Tribeca about fashion designer Diane von Furstenberg. And she's also directing a new Star Wars film. So yeah, she's just, doing great.
I know the name. I know the name of it.
Yeah, she's doing great. And she had made this, she's from Pakistan, and she made this exhibit for the 70th anniversary. And that's kind of where I really found out. I'm like, what is going on? Like, what is this? Like, and I was with my parents, and, we were at the food court afterwards, and I was just like, we're eating like KFC or something stupid. And I'm like, what is this? Like, tell me what's happening, So that's kind of like where this first like started. It's like, I knew like what partition was, and I knew like, like Pakistan used to be a part of India, but I didn't know like all these like what really went into it and the after effects. Like, it's something like, it's like, something that we talk about in the podcast with guests. It's like, it's not like, yes, it's history, but it's really like a living, breathing thing, that is still affecting like South Asians. Like, because I was born in Pakistan, I'm not really allowed to travel to India. So it's very, very difficult. And like, even though like I'm a US citizen, like I have a US passport, it still says where you're born on your passport. And I also have a very Muslim name. So Aziz is a very Muslim name. So it might be easier. Like, I haven't tried, but it is, they don't make it easy.
Right. But all that to say, like, it's still a thing. It's still, like you said, it's living history. It's happening.
Yes. Right. Yeah. It wasn't that long ago. Like, survivors are still here. Like, they're still fighting over land. Like, there's still like so many disputes. I mean, look at India and look at their prime minister. Like, they're basically calling for genocide for Muslims, and Pakistan isn't great either. I mean, I can't really think of any country off the top of my head where like, yes, like their government is awesome, right? Maybe New Zealand, but like if I had to say,
you had a moment during COVID where it was like, she's awesome.
She's great. Like, I love her.
Or whoever's running the Scandinavian countries, because they have like the
why not?
best quality of life rating. Yeah, they're doing something right. Yeah,
right. So and I'm just like, I was like, what is it's like most things, it's like 1 step forward, 2 steps back, right?
Yeah,
no matter where you are.
Yeah. Well, so that really taps into your journalism background, right?
Yeah. So like, I think so. I think that's kind of where my interest in like reporting or finding things that maybe people don't know about. And like, if like one person, I was always like in the camp, if like something I wrote like inspires someone to like go watch a film, or like listen to a band of like a concert review I did, or if or like picks up a book or something, like then I'm like, this is important, this is like worth it, and that's obviously kind of trivial comparatively speaking to like in a huge like historical event, but it's also like even things that are culturally specific, like they all have universal themes, right? Like, I'm sure everyone can relate to being lonely, or to being like to feelings of isolation, or feeling like they were bullied, or feeling incredibly helpless in a situation and out of control, right? So I'm like, you don't have to be, Indian, Pakistani, South Asian, what have you, to, I think to resonate like with this podcast. I think like, being a woman and listening to people's like women's stories of like what they had to survive, is people can like relate to that too. Is it exactly the same thing? No, but you can be like, oh yeah, like she described feeling like this, and I know what it's like to feel, feel like this, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's always kind of been.
There's something about like the more specific you get, it doesn't make sense, but the more specific you get, the more it's universally felt.
Yeah. And, I feel like there's just this like thing where like, if there's, especially like being in like programming and stuff, it's like, people are like, oh, this is an Asian film. And I'm like, what does that mean? It has like Asian people in it. Like, that's like weird, because it's like, Call Me by Your Name is one of my favorite films, but I don't identify as a gay man. And I don't need to, to understand like feelings of like emotion and being connected to somebody and longing, like those things are universal. Like, you don't have to be like a part of any specific community to be like, yeah, like I know what it's like, to, possibly have like unrequited feelings for someone, or, have a very powerful connection with someone, so it is like funny where people are just like, it's like when any other person like makes a film, like a white person makes a film, it's like for everybody. But like, if I make it, it's like, well, who's it for? And I'm like, it's for everyone. Like, you don't need to be South, you don't need to, be a part of specific communities, like to enjoy something. And that's something that's also just one of those like conversations that I think are always in like the festival space, especially.
Yeah. Yeah. So was that kind of the joy of journalism, was like the affecting people or moving people?
Yes, I think so. I mean, also like, like I wrote for the college paper, and I'm like, I'm not gonna lie, it's fun to watch movies and go to concerts for free. Like, that's always nice, right? But yeah, but it's also just like, a lot of the things I was writing about, I was also discovering myself. I'm like, oh, here's a band that's like local I didn't know about. Like, let me like look into it. And like, so it's also, yeah, it's just like everything I think is always done with the lens of discovery. I think with like, I feel like with like all the work I do,
you go in like looking to discover something.
Yeah. And it's like, like, it's like I knew about partition, but I didn't know like all like the nitty gritty details. And like, I knew ethnic studies, right, for that PBS show I wrote on, like I knew that's like something, but I didn't know like how it started, right? Like, I'm also like discovering it as I'm writing things, or with programming a festival, it's like, you have like some basics, right? Well, like what, like the audience, that's who you're programming for. And so you're like, okay, like here, like that's like something that you can pinpoint out. But like, no one really knows like what that lineup at the end of the day is going to look like,
Yeah.
So it's like, in the whole point of like a festival is discovering new talent and voices, and just kind of seeing what people are finding interesting and want to make stories about.
Yeah. No, there's a lot of people that say, oh, you write what you know or make what you know.
Yeah.
But I always thought that there was nice, like it's actually more engaging and more satisfying for the curious mind, for the artist.
Yeah. And I believe in that too.
They don't know, because you have to dive into it, right?
Right. And like, yeah. And I like, they're, like, that's something I also like my filmmaking happens to be like personal experiences, or experiences of like other people, or things that I'm like, oh, like this happened, but like I've always wondered about XYZ if like these other factors happened but didn't, so like it's kind of like a healthy balance of like of both,
Yeah.
I think.
So then how do you get that out of narrative storytelling when you're writing fiction, when you wrote the script of the movie you made? How do you get that curiosity itch scratched?
I think I was just kind of like like the story of the short called So That Happened, like it kind of formed, during like lockdown, like during like scary COVID. Like I turned 30 that year in 2020 in August. And so like, that's just,
That
an
is scary.
age. Yeah, it's like that age in people's life where like, it's like growing up, it's like 30s, like scary and like you're old
Yeah.
and like that's not true. But like all of these things and and then like we were isolated, right? Like there wasn't a vaccine. There and then so I was just like, and I live alone and I was unemployed, and especially during like those first few months, like we couldn't really see anyone. And then I think around this time people were doing like some social distance things, like we're gonna hang out in someone's yard and 3 feet away from everybody and like all these types of things. But like I was just like thinking of like my experiences, like dating experiences in my 20s and then like going into my 30s, and then just like like college, and just thinking of like, oh, like, well, like it's just like, oh, like, a lot of the people I talked to in college, like some of them I don't really talk to anymore, like, or like we keep up with each other on social media, but I don't like hang out with them, right? And like that's for a number of reasons. It could be like they, like they're in a different state, or they like all of these types of things. So I was like thinking about like the people that come in and out of your life, and like second chances. And it's just like, oh, like what if something more happened with a particular person, or what if like this happened? So that just all those kinds of thoughts. I'm also someone who has anxiety, so I'm like constantly overthinking all the time. So then I was just like thinking about all these different things, right? I was thinking about like, okay, I'm turning 30. I was like, this is what happened. It's like people that I was like, just like, like a yearning for human connection, because like we weren't allowed to, because of the pandemic, so it was just like kind of like all of these things. And then I'm like, okay, well, let me kind of think of a story where, someone comes back into someone's life. And like for me, like I went to UT Austin. I've been in Austin since 2009. So I've been here for 15 years. Like I was 19, I'm turning 34 in like 3 weeks, like those are very formative years in someone's life, like 19 to 34, right? And I felt like I really grew up like in Austin, like finding out different facets of myself, like, like experiencing different things, like, being away from like the suburbs and stuff like that. And and then like I never left, like I've stayed, but I've had friends who like stayed after graduation and then left, and then I had friends who left after graduation and then decide to move back to Austin, like to start a family, or like with their partner, or like a job opportunity, or or what have you. So I just kind of kept thinking, I'm like, well, I've always been here, but like what if someone who I knew moves back, and and they decide, like, in the film, like they're family friends who like haven't really seen each other in a long time, because they live in different places. And you know and it's like, and kind of like their mom, like the film opens up with like, well, it's my mom who's actually like the voice of like the mom character, like on the phone, where she's like, hey, like, like my parents do this. I don't know if your parents do this, but if like someone is like moving to the city that you're in, they're like, you need to take care of them. Like you need to show them around. Like they need, like, you need to help them out. And so that's kind of like how it starts. And she's kind of like, yeah, whatever, I guess. Like if he wants to text me, he can figure it out or whatever. And that's kind of like how things like happen. So like they meet up, and like they talk about what they're doing, like the past, just like all sorts of different things. And it's kind of a story that takes place mostly like in real time, like over the course of like one night is the bulk of the story. Yeah.
Okay. I want to see it now.
Oh yeah, I mean, I can send it to you for sure.
Did you get to showcase any of the places in Austin that
Yeah,
you
I
frequent?
did. Yes. So we actually shot in a restaurant that is walking distance from my house, which is
Oh,
nice.
man.
It's called Forward and Domestic. They were amazing. They were closed on Monday, so like we shot there. Um, really beautiful space. And then we shot guerrilla style on the street at 3 a.m.
Good.
So
I
that was
love
like
that. Break
whatever.
the rules.
Yeah, because we shot it in the summer, so we had to wait until it was like night, like true nighttime, you
Yeah.
know.
What was this last year?
Yes, this was August of 2023. Yeah,
Oh,
so
okay.
yeah,
Almost a
so,
year ago.
yeah, almost a year. Yeah, and then we shot in one of our crew's houses. Like they, you know, it was a beautiful house. Like we shot interior and exterior there, and like the two people who lived there are, one of them was our first AC, and them and their roommate unfortunately had to leave, and so it was kind of in a way like a last like hurrah, like to have this kind of thing at the house. Yeah.
So you graduated in 2015, right?
I graduated in journalism 2013. So that was like when I like truly graduated, because I went to school in 2009, and then
Oh, okay.
but I went to a community college first from 2008 2009, and then I transferred to UT, and then I did a minor in film because I wanted to be like a critic and like culture reporter.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
and so like I did like a minor in film, and you know, like after graduation, I was like like I would love to go to grad school. I don't have any money. That's not going to work. So then I like
Yeah.
did a degree audit, and I only needed like 2 or 3 classes to get like my full film degree. So then I was like, I was already working full time. I had a full-time job in retail because I wasn't making enough money as a journalist. I was working at the Austin Chronicle at the time, and then also doing freelance pieces. And so I was like, well, I'm going to go back and like finish these classes. And that's kind of where I started like the production side of film, because everything else was mostly like analytical and critical and stuff. And this is where I took my first screenwriting class and producing class and like production class too. Was there. Yeah. And so then I was there for like 3 semesters.
Yeah, like that gap between like when you directed your short that you directed last year and the last time you had directed something.
Yeah, it was a long time ago.
Yeah. What was that like shaking off the rust? And it can be, you know, you don't get a lot of like at bats, right? You don't get a lot of like practice directing. You just like,
it was
production,
weird.
and then all of a sudden you're on set and everyone's asking you questions.
Right? Yeah, it was really weird just because like in a lot of ways, I was like the least experienced person on set. Like I hadn't been on set that many times, but I think what made it slightly easier was like I had a really great team who I trusted, and like our crew was great. Like my producing team was great. I had gotten a grant from a company called Wavelength, and they give a grant to first-time female or non-binary people of color, and that came with like 1-year mentorship and $5,000. That kind of like spearheaded the whole thing. And like I was new to directing, but I wasn't new to storytelling because I had done the podcast. I had like, you know, had been writing journalism pieces. I had written scripts and things before. And like many people during COVID, like it was like people really found out like this is what I want to spend my time doing. I don't want to waste my time doing XYZ. Like this is my worth. This is what I want to do. Like, and that's kind of where I'm like, you know, I always knew I wanted to create my own things, but it kind of really wasn't until like, you know, like I was laid off and I had a lot of time where I'm like, okay, I'm going to really actively try to make an effort versus like working at my full-time job and then just kind of doing stuff when I can, which is also really hard, especially like if your job, like, you know, most jobs are incredibly tiring, right? Like you work in retail all day, like maybe you know, it's like what you're doing isn't hard, but it's hard work, right? Like you're dealing with people.
Draining.
Yeah, like you're dealing with people, you're
talking creative to people. At the end of the day.
Yeah. And you know, especially at South by, that did require me to be creative to a degree every single day. And it's like, is the next thing I want to do come home at like 7 and like want to write? Like, no. Like, you know, I have to start my day in 12 hours, you know? So I think like it was that I got lucky because I had like a mentorship. I had a great team. I talked to a lot of people who had made films before that I knew, and like asked like their experiences and things like that. And I think that's what helped. But yeah, like I was still like, and I feel that's always going to be the case, right? Like I feel like even though I've already made one, I feel like I'm trying to make a second one, and I feel like I'm still going to be like not crazy, like, you know what I mean? Like, still like, okay, like, you know, because there's only so much you can prepare, but like things will go wrong. Like, there's so many things out of your control, right? Like the first day, it was like all these things happened. Like, you know, like we go to someone's house to get the keys to the van, and then they're not home because they got the time messed up. And I was like, oh God, like we got to do this. Then me and my producer leave, and then our AC is like doing the van stuff. And then the van's like to load all the equipment, like the ramp was broken. And I'm like, how are we going to load all of this stuff? And then it's like we get to the restaurant where we're filming. And then they told us like, oh, there'll be a key to like do the AC and stuff, because we would have to turn it off when we're filming because it's too loud, right? And then there was no key, and we're just like, what is going on? And the owner, they were like, oh, well, they can just turn it off on their phone. I'm like, they're gonna have to do that a lot, like all day, and I do not want to bug this person like that. And then something happened. I'm not sure what happened, but we figured it out, and I'm just like, oh, like I was like, cool. So I was like, we haven't even done anything yet. Like 5 things have gone wrong, right? And there's like our first AD, his name's Matt. Like he was taking all these like behind the scenes pictures on his like 35mm camera, and there's just like really funny picture where like myself and our 2 producers are just like looking up, like trying to figure out like how to make this noise stop. So because then we're like, if we couldn't figure it out, then they would have to move, right? We'd have to move like where they would sit. And then I'm like, that changes every single shot in the film. So then it was just like,
you're like, I had a plan, it's in my head.
Yes. And now, it's like been written out. I've had the conversations, and now I'm just like, oh, cool. But it worked. That part at least worked out. So that was good.
But all those like problems that on a film of this scale, they become your problem as director, because you're also a producer, right?
It's also just like, I don't think I could, I can't really think of a situation where like something went wrong and then I tell someone else deal with it. I just don't think, I just like, no, like I want to know. Like, I want like,
well, when you get your Star Wars movie, then you're going to have to.
Sure. I'll have to do a lot of research for that one. So if that happens.
What was the moment on that? Like on the, how many days shoot was it?
It was 3 days. Yeah.
3 days. So what was the moment on that where you were like, oh yeah, I'm in the zone, where you're like, I feel like this is where I'm supposed to be. Like I'm directing now. Was there like a scene or a performance or a note you gave? Is always fun.
Yeah, I think it was the last scene of the film, which was shot on the second day, I think. Yes, I think it was shot on the second day because we did all the interior scenes in the house on the second day, and then the last day was like exterior stuff. And it was like an intimate scene with these 2 people. And so our actress, who was the main character, like she is an actress obviously, but like she had never been in a film before. This was her first film. And so like, there was like nerves there. I had the actors prepare a lot. Like we did like casting them, we did chemistry reads, we did all of that. They both lived in New York, so I made them do all of these things in New York together, and I made like mood boards for them, and like I'm like, y'all need to watch these films separately, watch one of these together, and then talk about your characters. I did all this stuff, so like they knew each other pretty well, and like and I had known the actor who plays the Imran character, the male protagonist, before. And so I think there, because it was, the house was small. And so basically anyone who wasn't like essential was outside. So it was just like me, the actors, the camera crew, and like sound, and our AD. So it was like very small. It was like 5 or 6 people. And so it was like very intimate. And so then like, I remember like our sound recorder, their name's Drewski. He, I don't think he had read the script before, or like a lot of things changed too. And I remember like we were recording all these things, and then like I like looked at him, I'm like, are we good? And he just went like chills, like he just said chills. And I'm like, yeah, I think this is really, it's like you see like the culmination of like like it coming to life, right? And like, this is how I imagine the scene to be. So I think it was like that. It's like the last scene of the film, I think.
That's great. And when it's,
Yeah.
you know, it's like one of just the other crew members reacting to your work, right?
Yeah, it's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just like also like, you know, being at the second day, like, you know, still like no expert, but at least like slightly more comfortable than I was the day
first day
before.
is tough, right?
You know, and then I was like, hey, like, what do you think if we did this? So like, what if like, you know, we did this, you know, because there was, you know, I wanted, you know, when the credits rolled, I kind of wanted some sounds to play because I wanted, it ends ambiguously. And I'm like, I want the audience to decide like what they think happens between these two characters. So I was like, okay, like move up and off the couch, like take your keys out of your pocket, like, you know, like put your phone down, like we like move this pillow, like we had them like we recorded all these different sounds to kind of like, I guess, play with expectations a little bit, I guess.
Yeah. That's cool. Was there anything that from that, like, you know, other era of actually being in film school when you were in that production part that you remembered or that you tapped into when you were making this?
I think it was just like probably just like the collaborative nature of like making a film, you know, because like I never really made films like on my own. Like everything was like a class like assignment, right? So then you were working like with your classmates and stuff, and it's like some people you knew better than others, just kind of depending on how things like shaped up. And like obviously there were people on set that I was like close to and were my friends who had been with me for a longer period of time, and there were people who were newer to me. And so I think it's just kind of like maintaining like safe environment, making sure everyone feels heard and respected, and just like, you know, doing what you can to make it comfortable, because we shot in the summer in Austin. It was hot. It was during the strikes. It was like a lot of things, you know, were happening. And, you know, like working on a film set is obviously really hard work. Working on a film set when it's like 100 degrees out is another thing, right? So I was just like so grateful that people decided to do this, you know?
If you want to get anyone like over their like illusion that filmmaking is glamorous, just invite them to come to a film set any day.
Yes, exactly. I was just like, I'm just like, everyone's sweating. I was like, we need to make sure everyone's drinking water. I was like, there was one day where my cinematographer, I think like was just like really in it and he hadn't had any. And I'm like, you need Gatorade. Like we need to fix this like right now. And, you know, but yeah, cause like, you're just like twice as exhausted. I like walk to the bus and wait like 3 minutes and I'm like, tired, you know, so it's like manning a camera and like that same kind of weather, probably worse because it was in August because it's hotter, you know, like I just have like such gratitude to anyone who worked on the film.
People don't talk enough about the physical toll of
it's tiring,
right? So like you did 3 days, imagine you know, a feature 40 days maybe.
Oh god.
So you react to it, but you want to do it because you love it, right?
I do, but I, you know, I would feel like with a feature I may have a little bit more help and hopefully a lot more money. So
there you go. That's
it
true.
might make things a little bit easier.
Help and money always they always help. Help make it easier.
They do. And I don't think I'll ever make a film in the summer unless it's like in Alaska. Like I don't think that's happening here. It made sense for like our timeline and how things worked out, but I was just like, wouldn't wish that upon anyone to do that again. So.
Is there a plan for the next one? You're not waiting 8 years again.
No, I'm not. So I've like written a script. I've written one draft of it. I actually haven't revisited since I wrote it, and I wrote it like a month ago, so it hasn't even been like that long. Because I was just tired because I was like, we were doing the film, and like, the film was done, but then it was like post-production, and then it was like festivals and like doing all these things, and then it's just like I don't want to, like, I'm still dealing with the first one. I don't want to like like think about another one, but then like, you know, a deadline for a cool program happened and I'm like, fine, I'll just have to I'll have to like do it. But it's like another kind of like slice of life story between two South Asian characters. and kind of really goes into like feelings and circumstances that are very prevalent in like online dating, since that's kind of like the norm where how people find each other for like all different kinds of relationships. So, and this one's a little bit more personal, more vulnerable than the first one. So I am applying to a lot of grants and a lot of programs to get funding, because last year, like we had a great crowdfunding campaign. Like we were fully funded in 3 days, which is amazing.
Wow.
And we met our stretch goal as well. So our goal was 15K, and we got to 20K at the end of the 30 days. And then, which was great. Yeah, no, it was crazy. But I'm like, I don't think that's going to happen again.
You can count on that every time.
Yeah, you can. And it's also just like, like I don't want to do a crowdfunding campaign so close to doing another one, especially when I still owe some people some incentives from their pledges, so I'm just like, so I'm also like, well, I kind of want to, well, now that I have like demonstrated work, right? Like then I'm hopefully there's like, and there's so many amazing programs to apply for that I wasn't eligible for because I didn't have like a body of work to show for it. Particularly there's a really great grant in Austin called the Elevate grant that I am going to apply for, where individual creatives can apply, and that's great. And they can, and that money can go towards like work that they want to put out for people. So I'm kind of in like the very beginnings of like development, basically. And I feel like the earliest I would film it would be like maybe in like April, May. Yeah. And then if that doesn't work out, it's going to be the fall. Right. I'm not going to do this ever again. Yeah.
You know about the AFI directing workshop for women?
I do. Yes, I do. I actually have the tab open because I have a separate like window of like programs I'm applying to. And I do know people who did go to AFI like grad school. And so they've also like told me about it in the past. Yeah.
Oh, who do you know?
Someone I was in a workshop with, her name is Javni Mota. I don't know if you know her.
I know Javni, yeah.
Oh, you do?
I know Javni well, yeah.
Cool, yeah. So I was in a mentorship program with her, and she's also just like killing it left and right. Absolutely, just amazing. And so she, we're all in like a WhatsApp group, and so like we share opportunities and stuff on there. And like at the time, it didn't make sense for me to apply because I was like in the middle of like everything. But I think when it reopens, and it's definitely something I'm looking into for sure.
It's a great program. It is.
Yeah.
It doesn't give you the funding, but if you get into a program like that, you'll get funded.
I'm also just like, I will find a way. I was like, I will make it work. If there's certain requirements you have to meet, and like, if I have to move to LA, if I have to do XYZ, I was like, I'll find a way, I'll make it work. I'll do it,
No, that's got to be your mantra from now on. If,
you're
gonna be a filmmaker, because there's no excuses, because you can literally shoot something and distribute it.
Right. Yes. Yeah. So I'm always in the camp of just like, like maybe I won't get in, like maybe it won't happen. I don't know. But like, if I do, like, I'll figure out a way to make it work.
Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely. So do you think that, so now you've gone through it, you've made a film and you're putting it out there in festivals, and you're also a festival programmer. Does it change the way you look at films? Do you think that other programmers should like have made a film?
That's interesting. So like when I'm like programming and things like that, like very rarely I feel like does a film not get in because it's like bad, right? And even then that's like subjective, right? It's like so many different factors. Especially like, a festival like Cleveland, like we play like 125 more feature films, right? And those are just feature films. Like at Austin Asian, we play 30 combined. Like they're very, very different. That's small, right?
Out of what, like thousands of submissions?
Yes, right. Well, not for Austin Asian, it's more of a couple of hundred, because we're like, a regional festival. But yeah, Cleveland, yes, thousands of submissions, so there's like more space, there's more whatever. And it's like people gravitate towards different things. I think it's made the rejection process like a lot easier, because I've always been a person who I'm just like, well, if it doesn't happen, it's not meant to be. I'm going to do everything in my control to like make something happen, but like so many things are obviously not in your control. So if I don't get into a certain festival, I'm like, okay, but it's also like, I know there are so many films that I love that I don't take because it's like, I'm not the only decision maker. you know, this isn't my dad's festival where I can just be like, yeah, we're going to do whatever I want, right? Like, it's like you're working with a team. Like each festival has its own identity and like audience and like things like that. So I think it's been helpful for sure that way. But I also think like so many people think like one festival is like the end all be all, and like it's not. Like, you know, I was just like, yeah, of course. Like, is it amazing to get into Sundance and South by? Absolutely. Would I love to play at those festivals? Absolutely. But it's also just like it's not like your film isn't going to have a life if it doesn't play there, you know.
Right.
And it's also like for me, like festivals are great, you know, like I love them. Obviously, like I work for them, and I had volunteered at Sundance for 4 years before I started working at South by. But it's also like, but it's like it's kind of like the perk, right? Well, now I have something that I know I enjoy and that I like, and then I want to create more things, and like getting into festivals is kind of like how you can share your work with the world, right? But it's not like, you know, I don't. Well, I'm sure some people do statistically, but like I don't set out to make things. I'm like, well, this is a Sundance film. Like they will take this because of XYZ, right? I'm sure some people do, but that's not really how I look at things. But yeah, honestly, sometimes even though I love my film so much, like there's obviously things I would want to change, or like things where I'm like, oh, like, you know, what if we did this or what if we did that, and whatever. And it's like, you know, even something like if I subjectively think something is bad, right? The amount of work that goes into making that, like, it's just like, I think it would be helpful for people to do that, right? It's kind of like I feel like everyone in the world should know what it's like to work in a service industry job, right? Like, so like
Yes.
you know what I mean? Like, so
Yes.
everyone like knows
It
how
just
to
it just
behave
instills you with
and
empathy
knows how to
across
act,
the board.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because like I
Yeah.
think again, there's like this idea of just like, oh, like those are jobs for people who are like uneducated or like how or like whatever. And I'm like, that's really not the case. I was just like also, you know, like I was working in retail and I had 2 degrees. Like I was like, it doesn't matter. Like it's
Right.
just like it,
Right.
you know, and even if they are, who cares? Like, you know, it's still a job. Everyone still deserves like respect.
Yes.
You know, so I mean, I think it would be interesting for people to do that. But I think for me, I don't know if I've really like noticed like I feel because I've always just been a very like sensitive, I'm a sensitive person as well. So I feel like I'm usually like really trying to look at things like holistically and with so many different lenses and stuff. So I don't think like that aspect has necessarily changed with like how I look at things before I made a film and after. But I do think that, you know, it is interesting to have like both of those experiences and like, you know, because like there are times where I'm like the filmmaker and I'm like, I need information from a festival or whatever, or
Yeah.
like, you know, but it's also like, I don't know. I feel like I'm talking in circles now, but I think it's
No,
just
no, no.
like, sorry, I'm like, I just
I
kind of
just think
blabble a
like
lot.
I think it would be so hard for me to do your job, your programming job, because I do know so many filmmakers. I've made some
Yeah.
shorts, and like there's the empathy part of like, oh my God, I know how hard it is.
Yeah.
But then
It
I
is.
also think, again, talking in circles that you've taught me how to do is if something was just like, you know, like you said, bad is subjective, but sometimes things are just
Yeah.
bad. And
Right.
then you can easily go, well, there's no excuse for that, right?
Right. Yeah.
Some of
And I
them you
think
can
it can
easily
make
go
you look
like
at
that
things
after
like,
you've made a film. Yeah.
yeah, and it can make you look at things a little bit more critically and just be like, okay, you know, so I think that's, you know, I think that's also helpful, but it's, you know, like you know, I submitted my film to South by. It was a really big decision for me. You know, like I was like, well, I used to work there. It's like,
Mhm.
you know, like there was a lot of feelings there. And one of my good friends is like the lead shorts programmer there. And she had to call me and she told me like, hey, like, you know, we're sorry, like the film didn't get in. And I'm like, that's okay. Like I was just like, I know how hard that job is, you know, and like, yeah, like I think like any kind of like not like negative feelings, but any kind of like feelings I had about it were so much more about like the time I spent at the like working there, because that's obviously very different, like right, working there and attending there, like those are 2 very different things, right?
Yeah.
So I was just like, and it just like it was a very long thought process for me to even submit there. And I was just like, that's okay. I was just like, I know how hard it is, you know,
Yeah.
and it's just like there's like like possibly my chances were a little bit better only because like they have a Texas shorts section, right? And I like made it in Texas, but even then, like I think they only had like 8 films or something. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so, and it's like, I'm just kind of like, it'll find its place, you know?
Well, it does. You know, I talk to a lot of filmmakers and they think like, oh, if you know a programmer at Sundance or South by or something,
No.
you have a much better shot, or you're in. But it's,
absolutely
you
not.
know everyone, and it's just that there is legitimacy to the selection process, right?
Yeah, no, of course. Like, yeah, like maybe like they'll be like, oh, like this person's an alum. Like maybe they'll note that, but it's not like, no, there's like even with Austin Asian, right? Like I obviously know a lot of Asian filmmakers and I had to send a lot of those same things. Like I texted them or called them or emailed them personally, be like, hey, like this is like what's going on, you know, like, cause I think we had almost like 500, I think, short submissions, and we only could take 19. And that was really pushing it. Like, and that's because we played 3 in front of features, you know? And so like I also had to text a lot of my friends and call a lot of my friends and be like, hey, like I'm sorry. Also, like what made it even like more intense was some of those films that were rejected from my festival played in the same block as me for a festival I was playing at. So I was just, and we had the notification date was the date of the day that we were showing. And I was just like, 4 of these people have submitted films to my festival and not one of them is playing.
That's so weird.
It is weird, but I think it's like, and it's just like, I was like, that's uncomfortable. I don't like that. But I was just like, but this is what it is. This is what I have to do. So it's just like, and it's like, I think if you come at anything with like compassion and you're like, you know, and it's like, again, like none of these films were like, I didn't think they were bad. There were things I really loved and I really liked, but I'm like, you know, like around 15 really spots, and like you're working with like, you know, like I am the artistic director, but there's like 2 short programmers and like we're working together to like figure things out, you know. And so I had to send emails to all of them before and you know, I think one of them, because I kind of knew who they were beforehand, like we had talked about it, but I think others realized like after the fact, like, oh, you're that person who made this film, and like, and then, you know, but I mean, it's like, it is what it is. And, you know,
that's how they were thinking.
Well, not like you're that, like, well, maybe there was, I don't know. But I was just like, you know, but I'm just like, well, it is what it is. And it really, like, I mean, sure, it can feel personal, absolutely. And me being sensitive, like a lot of times I have to be like, it's not, you know. But yeah, like this like rule of like this not rule, like this idea of like, oh, I know someone at Sundance and I know someone at Southside or whatever. I'm like, that doesn't, I'm like, maybe like, sure, like maybe it's like applying to college and maybe you'll get like 1 extra point or something, but like, you know, but like it's not like any kind of automatic in. Like getting into these festivals, Sundance, South by, Tribeca, I'm like, it's like applying to college. Like the admissions are like similar, if not harder, like to get into Sundance and the South by than it is to get into like Harvard and Yale, you know. Like it's like those percentages are very, very small.
Well, and like you said, it's not one person making a decision,
right? It's like a team. It's
so
like
I always feel like if you knew someone, it actually has to be exceptionally good because you have to put it forward with the rest of the team knowing that you know that person.
Right. Yeah. And it's like, you know, Sundance has all of those development programs. And I think people also think that if you went through a development program, that whatever project is also going to end up in the festival. But, you know, someone I know personally was in one of those and her film didn't get in, you know, and that is like a crazy thing to think about. But it's also like, it's not even that is like a guarantee. Right. Like, so it's just like, it's like, in fact, it's like you said, like they're probably gonna like rate it a lot more harshly because you've had these experiences, you know, that other people didn't, you know. But yeah, I think when it comes to programming, it's really just like, it's really having like compassion. It's really just like looking at things from like so many different perspectives, you know.
Yeah. All right, we're coming up on an hour, so I'm gonna be respectful of your time. So this is like rapid fire, not that rapid fire, but just to connect it back to, since it's called After Film School, I gotta like kind of connect it back to film school. But
sure,
a light bulb moment in film school, or a teacher that inspired you, you know, that really cracked open this mystery of filmmaking for you?
It's a good question. I think I would say,
Or a movie that you saw that where you're like, oh,
okay.
even
So I feel like I have like two answers.
okay.
So when it came to like an instructor, there was an instructor who was my I had for a producing class and then advanced producing. His name is Micah Barber. He was also like a very good screenwriter. He had advanced like to the semifinals, I believe, for the Nickel Fellowship. Also on an episode of Property Brothers, which is just really cool.
And random.
I was just like, we were in class and I'm like in my 20s, right? And everyone's like 19. And then he's like, who are these people? And I'm like, oh my God, they're the Property Brothers. Everyone's like, what the fuck? Like, what is that? But yeah, because they did a season in Austin. But yeah, like I think he's always just been like like a teacher who I feel like I learned a lot from. And you know, we'll see, like, you know, because we keep up with each other on social media and I see them, you know, there's a lot of festivals in Austin, a lot of film events in Austin, so I see them and I feel like I felt like very comfortable in like that class because I felt like everything that I was learning was making sense. I felt like I was like, there were things that were like not only applicable to like making a film, but I feel like to life. And then
those are always the best classes.
yeah, exactly. And I think for a film, ooh, that's a good one. I want to say, this might be a cliche answer, but I feel like it took several times for me to be like, okay, was Citizen Kane. Like the first time I watched it, I was 17 and I'm like, whatever, like, you know, like, but I'm like, yes, it looks amazing, you know, whatever. But then I think like in college, I think it was possibly like the 6th or 7th time where I'm like, all right, I get it. Like I was like, I understand. So I'm sure there's
you
like
have to give it 6 chances to
yeah,
really stick.
so I'm sure there were other, because they teach it in every class and you like just dissect it like layer by layer in different ones just depending on what the class was. I'm sure there's like one that was like probably a better answer, but that's the one that like came to mind. So I'm like, okay, after like 6 or 7 views, I'm like,
you can never go wrong with Citizen Kane as far as like, you know, studying the craft.
Yeah.
A person or the moment, a moment that now you can look back on, and that was like kind of what started your career. Because usually at the time you don't know it, but
yeah, well, you know, I think it probably was like interning at the Austin Chronicle, which is like our alternate weekly newspaper here. I started that like maybe like 2 or 3 months before graduation from college. And that's kind of where I first got to like write. I mean, I wrote like film pieces for like the college newspaper, but like I think like at the Chronicle, I think it's really where like it was like went to like a deeper level. And I also got paid, which was nice, right? For like
always good.
yeah. Well, actually I did get paid at the Daily Texan too. I forgot about that, but it's a different range. And but it was just like, you know, I think like one of the first things was like in 2014, that was my first year volunteering at the Sundance Film Festival. And even then it was like just like a really crazy thing that happened. Like I applied to be a volunteer, which is actually very competitive, and I didn't get it because I was like, the housing there is insane. Like, y'all have to give me housing. And then they're like, yeah, no, whatever. And so then someone wasn't able to make it. And then like, I think a week or like 5 days before Sundance started, they're like, hey, you have a spot, like, do you want to come? And I'm like, yeah. And so then like the arts and culture editor at the time, her name was Monica, and I was like, hey, like I'm going to Sundance, can I review some films there? And I think that's kind of really what like opened the door to me like covering South by, because I was the only because I was still an intern, you know. I may have been writing pieces I was getting paid for, but I was still an intern, and like I was the only person who got to cover South by in 2014. You know, and then it's just like crazy. It really is crazy how things work out, because like I like was a critic, right? And then like I worked at South by. I got denied being an intern there twice, which is really funny, then ultimately ended up working there. So really is funny
That's
how
right. You
things work.
skipped intern and went right to
Yeah. How things work. You know, and I think that like gave me a little bit of like a bounce in my step. I'm like, okay, now I feel like more comfortable like doing things. And I'm like, what about this idea? Let me try to do this, or like, you know, so I think like then it's just like that having that experience, I think just like kind of opened up a whole new kind of world, even though I'm not really in like the criticism space anymore. It like I feel like that's kind of like where it all started.
Yeah. You have an interesting background because, you know, you're a filmmaker. We've decided that. We know that. But most film festival programmers, at least that I know, their background is not filmmaker, and most critics are not filmmakers.
No.
Right? Very, very few go into filmmaking.
Right.
And you've done both, and you're in it, which is also very dangerous, right? Because you probably trash some colleagues' films that you're going to work
Sure.
with, right?
Yeah.
Have you ever had a moment where you've encountered someone?
Yeah. Well, it's like I feel like kind of like I don't think I've ever like even in like negative reviews, they're like obviously they will never say like this is garbage. That's like not true. That means you're not looking at things critically or looking at things like, you know, also it's also important to acknowledge that even though something is not for you, that doesn't mean it's bad. But I think the only time I can kind of think about it is in the podcast, there's an episode where I talk about partition in the media. And so there's like very few examples of films that discuss partition. The best one, I think, is Miss Marvel on Disney. They actually have like the last 2 episodes devoted to that. And like one of the films I discussed was called Viceroy's House, and it was basically the perspective of Lord Mountbatten, who was in charge of the partition and like and everything. And it's like I don't care about this man's point of view. Like, you know, it's just like, and it was like taken from this book called Freedom at Midnight, which is also based on 2 European historians, and it was like a straight account from Mountbatten or whatever. And the director, who's Gurinder Chadha, who made Bend It Like Beckham, a film that I really, really love. And, you know, she did Blinded by the Light, another film that's so charming and fun. And I was just like, why'd she make this? I was like, I don't get it. Like, and, you know, and we're talking about it like with like the utmost respect, but, you know, but it's also just like, I wasn't super into it. And then I did see her at Sundance, like at the South Asian House. Like she doesn't know who I am, but I think if I didn't, like if I didn't like talk about that film in the podcast, I think I would have went up to her. But I think it's like, no, I don't think I should do that. I don't think I should talk to her after saying like on a podcast, like, yeah, I didn't like this that much. You know what I mean? But, you know, but yeah, I don't think there's been a time yet where it's just like, oh, like, you wrote a negative review of like, you know, whatever. I don't think that's happened because that was only like, you know, like most of those reviews were done like almost like a decade ago now. Like I was in my 20s. Like that's not, I was just like, also like, I was like, why are you even listening to a 22-year-old? Whatever. Like it doesn't matter. They don't know anything.
Yeah, if you're letting that
like,
affect you, you have other issues to deal
right.
with.
Yeah. I was like, I was just like, you know, my review of the Daily Texan, I was like, it shouldn't be haunting you like 12 years later. You know what I mean? So
exactly.
like, but yeah,
so I know that about like, because I love reading film criticism and, you know, really, I don't want to say negative reviews, but they sometimes bring out some of the best writing.
They do. Yeah. Because it's like, you have to acknowledge like, you know, like, yes, this isn't great, but there's parts of it that are really great. And like, I love this one moment. And if there was a little bit more of this, like maybe I would feel different, you know? But I guess on that same note, there are films that have played at festivals I've programmed at, but didn't get into another festival I programmed at. And then I've had to like do that. But that's a little bit different. And also like the filmmakers understand also just, you know, they're different festivals, different things, right?
Totally. Okay. Your favorite mistake that you made, a specific mistake that you learned the most from. And don't say you've never made a mistake.
Oh, no, I make mistakes all the time.
Protocol, it could be, you know, handling filmmakers at a festival. Even on this most recent film you made. Something that you learned from?
Okay. Well, this like seems really silly, but it's important. Like we did not get enough food. So like
That is
we
so
were just
important.
like, yeah, I was just like, we have food. Like we like, you know, the executive director at Austin Asian has a Costco membership. I'm like, cool. I was like, we're getting things at Costco. And then like, you know, so like, you know, like we ordered like meals also, but then like snacks, I'm like, now we need to get more. Like, cause I was just like, you never know. I was just like, we didn't have enough and we had to go get more, you know? So I think like, is like we did not budget enough money for food. It's probably the thing where I'm just like, we need to like up that by like several $100s the next time I make a movie.
Yeah, it's so important, especially on smaller films when nobody's making a lot of money or any money. Sometimes feed everybody really well.
Right, exactly. So like, yeah, like the food, like, you know, the meals we got were really great, but and like the snacks were really great too. Like I love snacks, but I was just like, yeah, we like there were 60 of these and now there's 3 and there's still like 2 days left. We need to remedy this right away. Yeah.
And so then this leads to the question of I see Remy on top of your book.
Yes.
I mean, the food goes right to that. Why Remy?
So I love Ratatouille. It's like one of my favorite movies. Like, you know, Josh O'Connor, I know he mentioned that several times, and it's really nice when men understand the important things, like how great Ratatouille is. And it's just like it's a film I really love. And it has a great message, right? Like anyone can cook, right? Like this type of thing. Also, like, I had a friend actually get that for me. And so like she ran, I think like a race, like I don't know if it was a marathon or half marathon, like at Disneyland or Disney World or something. And like she knew how much I love Ratatouille, and she got like a few of her close friends, and so she got this one for me. And it's actually it won't work now because of the shirt I'm wearing, but there is like a magnet where like you can put it under your shirt and it'll like stick to your shoulder.
That's so cool.
It's really cute. Yeah, it's really cute. But yeah, I think it's just like nice, right? Like this is like a rat who's like making food, and it's just like,
which is like it's a great metaphor for any kind of artist, right?
Right, exactly. And that's like something that I really like. And it's also just like, like I made my first film when I was 33. I actually shot it right after, like the day after my birthday. Like the day of my birthday, we were doing like wardrobe fittings and like tech stuff. And like there's so many people I know who are like my age, who are older than me, who are just like, oh, like I want to do this and I want to make a film and I want to do this. And I'm like, you can. I'm like, you're not dead. I was like, if you're dead, like then no. But I was just like, like it's just like anyone can make art, right? It's just like you just have to like do it, and for me, like that's also something I think about, like, the catalyst. I knew I wanted to make this film, but what like really pushed me is because I got a grant that I was like, oh, I need to make it in 2023. Like that's a rule that they have,
yeah.
So, and that's something as a journalist is really important to me. That's also stuck with me, is it's like I'm very deadline driven, right? Like it's a little bit harder for me to like work on something without like a deadline. Like I'm not incredibly disciplined in that way, but if something's due like August 1st, I'm like, all right, like I need to get like down to this and stuff.
And it can't be a self-imposed deadline. It has to be a real
deadline. I mean, I have those and like, very mixed results on that front. But yeah, I think it's just like everyone thinks like, if you didn't do it by an X amount of age, it's like not going to happen. And I'm just like, Ava DuVernay didn't pick up a camera, I don't think, until her like late 30s or 40s. I was just like, I was like, Ridley Scott is like, I don't even know, like 110. I don't know. He's still making movies. Like I was like Clint Eastwood.
He started very late also.
Yeah, I was like, they're still making movies. Debatable if they should still be, but like Clint Eastwood especially. But like I will see Gladiator too, Paul Mescal, absolutely. But but I was just like, you can do like anything you want. It was just like, it's like if you don't make a film like when you're 25, like that doesn't mean you're not ever going to, and I had that mentality for a long time, and I still kind of feel that way, right? Because like it's so easy to compare yourself to people, right? When you see someone who like gets into Sundance and like wins an award or like XYZ, and it's and they're like younger than you or whatever the case may be, like that stuff has an impact. But it's also just like, well, things are different. I was like, you don't know their life. I was just like, you know what I mean? So it's just like, I mean, that's obviously easier said than done, but it's like, like, it's just kind of like you do you, man. Like, and it's just like,
I mean, comparison is the worst thing you can do.
It is. And it's very hard to ignore. And like, again, that's still something I'm constantly struggling with. But yeah. But yes, I do love Remy. We meant to bring it and have it on set. But I forgot. We did have googly eyes on set though, which was fun.
Oh, I love Google. Wait, I got my googly eyes.
Fun. Amazing. Love it.
I got to interview the Daniels, so I put this on my mug.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So we did, for Austin Asian, like we work with A24 to do a couple of advanced screenings for things. And we did some for Everything Everywhere. And they gave us a bunch of googly eyes. And so then I just had them on set. I was just like, have them, whatever. And then one of our second AC put them on the slate, which is really cute. That we had. Yeah. And then I had it like and I had name tags for everyone. So I'm like, I know everyone's name, but it's like not everyone knows each other. Like everyone needs to know each other's name and what they do, like.
That's a little thing, but that does so much for
it does. Yeah. I was just like, we're
camaraderie.
all contributing to this,
Yeah.
We're all a part of this. And so I was just like, hey, I'm just gonna throw some googly eyes in here. So like that's what we
Googly
did.
eyes, they just make people happy. I don't know
They're
what it
fun.
is.
I love things with eyes on them. I don't know if you can see, but there's like eyes on like my couch pillow over there. But I do. I just love things with eyes on them. So
yeah. Well, it's a great note to end on, which is like anybody can do it. Just go do it. Doesn't matter, how old you are, where you are. And I, if you had never said your age, I wouldn't have guessed that because you exude youthful energy, like with your.
That's so nice.
Your soul and your personality. So, send me the link to your film. I want to watch it.
I will. Yes.
Keep making them. Give yourself some deadlines, and thank you for spending this time with us. It was fun.
Oh yeah, thanks for like wanting to talk. I know like we went over. I'm sorry, I have the tendency to babble.
No.
Sorry.
I'm always trying to be respectful of your time. Okay. I can. It's only 7:15 out here in LA.
Oh yeah, no, I'm chilling. I just plan to watch Twister after this because I'm watching the sequel on Wednesday, so it's not like super important.
I'm excited. Yeah,
I'm excited too. I love Twister. I also think it's hilarious that this is Lee Isaac Chung's follow-up to Minari. So that's also amazing.
It makes no sense.
Right? Also, like, hey, you want to switch genres? Here's a great example. Couldn't be more different. These two films. So.
Someone needs to play those back to back, double feature.
Oh my god, that would be amazing. That's a really great idea. That would be amazing. That's a really good idea.
The Twister comes into the town and then just rips up the little.
Oh my god, I love that. That's
RV.
So funny.
All right, Neha, am I saying it right? Neha,
yes.
Neha, thank you so much.
Yes.
Next time you're in LA, come say hi.
I will for sure. And then I'll send you a link actually right after we get off, just so I don't forget.
Awesome.
Okay.
Have a good night.
You too.
Enjoy Twitter.
I will. Bye.
Thank you for tuning into the After Film School podcast. If you're interested in supporting the show, please reach out to us. For more information and to join the conversation, visit our group Telegram channel, After Film School Podcast, where you can ask follow-up questions and engage with our community. The link is in the description. Don't forget to subscribe and follow us on Instagram at After Film School Podcast. We truly appreciate your support and look forward to connecting with you again soon. With gratitude, the After Film School podcast team, Chris and Renee.